Hi, my name is Jared Wilson. Welcome to my EDL 854 Module 12 case study. Mr. Carl Santos is the current principal at Briardale Elementary School. Briardale is one of 6 elementary schools in the district. Mr. Santos appoints Mr. Bailey to be the next president of Briardale Foundation Committee. Mr. Briardale is a Harvard grad with ambitious goals to bring school fundraising to an ultimate height. Mr. Bailey plans to a giant raffle system with a cash prize. Mr. Bailey gets pre-approval for the raffle to raise money for the foundation. On the night of the cash prize reveal, Mr. Bailey is arrested, booked, and later released. Unknowingly to all parties involved, the sheriff was tipped off about a cash raffle and pursued further. Later that week, Mr. Bailey received a misdemeanor and was placed on probation for his role in the raffle ticket fundraiser. The incident was featured on the front page of the community newspaper, and it left a mark on the Briardale Foundation. When it took place during school, the incident took place within a year of appointing Mr. Bailey, where it was at Briardale Elementary School, which is one of 6 of the elementary schools in the district in a very diverse community. Who's involved? Carl Santos, he's the principal. Mr. Bailey is the president of the foundation. Mr. Morley, who's a president of another district school foundation, a sheriff, community tipster, and a foundation committee. Ethical and legal issues. So ethical issues, the incident caused distrust within the community, highlighted an oversight with school policy. Mr. Santos showed that, or should have done more research and put the school's reputation in the hands of a community member rather than of a staff member. Not that either way it's good to put the reputation on the line, but when a school elects a person outside of the school to do that, it causes issues. Legal issues. Hosting a raffle in Kansas must follow protocol with prior authorization. No specific laws were mentioned in the case. There was a result in a misdemeanor charge, which does lead one to believe that there was a law previously held that was broken. Mr. Bailey received a misdemeanor and probation for his actions, and Briardale lost both money and respect, as well as suffered a great deal of embarrassment, risking an equitable education for all students. Legal consequences. There were no specific laws mentioned, but being that Mr. Bailey is convicted of a misdemeanor shows that an existing law was broken. And one law in Kansas, or in the state of Kansas, was that all raffle tickets must follow proper authentication with the state and all procedures prior to the event. There were no indications of a breach of contract. The case highlighted that Mr. Santos covered the job requirements and parameters with Mr. Bailey, but it does not go into detail about the contract requirements. In one sentence, Mr. Carl Santos is the principal at Briardale Elementary School who was involved in a ticket raffle debacle when the foundation president, Mr. Bailey, is arrested and convicted of a misdemeanor charge for illegally seeking fundraising funds, causing distrust and embarrassment for all stakeholders involved. People is Carl Santos, Mr. Bailey, Mr. Morley, sheriff, the community, and the foundation committee. The place was at Briardale Elementary School. It is one of 6 elementary schools. It is a K-5 school with 600 students in a diverse community. The program, it is a public education program. The school is the elementary school, which is K-5. It focuses on basic skill curriculum, but it does have supplemental funding. It shows that supplemental funding previously had went to alternative programs such as art, music, and foreign language. Some of the money that they were discussing with the fundraiser would apply to those alternative programs as well. Prioritizing information. The debacle has an impact on all parties within the district. This incident could impact all schools, administrators, and communities within the district. It still needs to consult some of the stakeholders, so the school board needs to be advised, as well as the superintendent and the legal team for the district and school. Directly affected would be Briardale Elementary, Mr. Santos, Mr. Bailey, and the Briardale Foundation, as well as the community for Briardale Elementary. Can we learn more about the situation? Yes. One of the biggest pieces of information is the specific law that was broken. How to avoid legal trouble for the present and the future, and how to obtain the needed approval for future fundraisers. But do I have enough to make a decision? Yes, I believe there is enough information to make a decision. So number one could be no action. District policy will not change. Fundraising policy for the foundation stay the same, and there's no further protection from lawsuit. Highest amount of impact, all district policy for fundraising and for foundations is reviewed and altered. Mr. Barely is removed from the presidential position. Funding decisions power goes to building administration for all the foundations, and Mr. Santos is dismissed from his position as principal. Alternative options could be to require all presidents to show prior knowledge of fundraising law, provide more oversight by administration for residents, relieve both Mr. Barely and Mr. Santos from their positions, and formally write up Mr. Santos. Option number one, that the incident has already occurred, there's no reason to pursue further. Pros of this would be less likely to see pushback from law enforcement, from dismissing staff. The situation had already been handled legally. The community is aware of the situation, and it shines light on the lack of understanding and policy for foundation. So it shows what the school needs to work on to be better to keep it from happening. Cons, it does not prevent the situation from happening again. It demonstrates poor responsibility to the community, and it leaves the school open for liability. Option 2 has the highest impact option. It removes both Mr. Santos and Mr. Barely from their positions. It removes all financial decisions and fundraisers from the foundation, and it consults the school legal team / lawyer. Pros for this is it shows accountability. It removes individuals directly involved in the situation, shows initiative to prevent the situation from occurring again, and a fresh start for the staff and foundation with new leaders. Cons of this is the dismissal of staff, the hiring process for the new school leadership, and the complete restart of the fundraising process. Option number 3 is middle ground options. So remove Mr. Barely from the president of the foundation, formally write up Mr. Santos, and require all district schools to evaluate fundraising policies and consult the school district legal team and school board, implement policy to follow all state law and regulations. So the pros of this is that Mr. Barely is let go for placing the school in potential legal trouble and breaking the law. Mr. Santos is not let go, but is formally addressed. Policy for fundraising is analyzed to lessen the chances of incident from occurring again, and the legal team is consulted and aware of the situation in case there is litigation. Cons of this is you're letting your president go, someone that was very educated, someone that seemed like they would fit the foundation nicely. So you're having to let a president go and having to hire a new one. Mr. Santos does get written up more in action. He's getting written up but not let go because it was an action done by another, not just on his own. Other schools have to implement a new policy. They still have to restart fundraising efforts, and supplementary curriculum financially impacted. So some of those classes could potentially be impacted, but that's kind of a con with all three options, as there's no chance to really take in that money that was being collected illegally. For this, I chose option 3. I believe option 3 would allow the best opportunities for all parties involved. While public embarrassment is difficult to accept, avoiding legal liability is the number one concern. Schools who are involved in legal battles potentially put all stakeholders in danger. It is critical to notify the legal team and ensure the school gets ahead of the situation, then evaluates and implements policy to show proof of an attempt to reduce any chances of the incident happening again. The biggest issue is the students who are going to suffer academically. They need to be a direct route to attempt to regain funding for supplementary curriculum for the well-being of all students. And throughout this process, it is critical that the schools are evaluating all state laws and policies for fundraising prior to beginning a new fundraiser. How would we implement this? The first step in implementation is to arrange a meeting to address all stakeholders. This meeting should first include staff, administration, and the school board. It should also include the discussion between Mr. Barely and the school, making sure that he knows that he's being let go, as well as Mr. Santos having his formal written up. Implement a committee within the district principals to help develop a district-wide policy for foundation fundraising. Hold staff meetings within each school to share the decided policy to make sure all fundraising is handled appropriately. Highlight that all fundraising must be pre-approved by administration, possibly district administration, to ensure that all those state laws are being followed, and work with newly appointed foundation president on approved types of funding or fundraising, going over legal and logistics with the presidents prior to fundraising, establishing a working relationship with the president and legal team to ensure all current fundraising is legal, and provide transparency within the community about types of appropriate fundraising, where the money is being spent, and how that is being collected. It is important to establish meetings with staff and administrators to make sure everyone's on the same page. After making a mistake like the debacle, it is important to ensure total transparency with the community. What if the plan doesn't work? It is important to continuously work on the policy to ensure that the district is always making an attempt to follow all state laws. We are human. We all are going to make mistakes when you have multiple entities in a community. There's more chance of that to happen. And it's important that the school does not have to prevent every single thing from taking place, because that would be impossible, but they do have to show proof of always trying to do the best at that and to prevent those things from happening. Overcoming this mistake will take a collective effort from all stakeholders. The community must trust the school is doing their best to follow all state laws, and the school and the district must allocate time and resources to ensure that all laws are being followed. This is the resource that I used for this scenario. Here is my reflection. The assignment provided an opportunity to analyze a real-life situation when financial situations can have a lasting impact on a school district. It was clear that everyone involved in the situation had the right mindset and intentions. Even though there were good intentions, it can still lead to negative outcomes for all stakeholders. It is important for administration to work to ensure that all school policies follow state laws. If a school policy follows state laws, the chances for legal issues is reduced. When schools are able to establish strong internal controls, it puts less burden on administrators. Following school policy allows the decision to become more black and white and allows less opportunities for financial mistakes. This case also highlighted how many stakeholders can be damaged. Ultimately, the mistake of two individuals impacts the well-being of all students within the school. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.